And we are told that we're not old enough to know this yet. I'm only 11 years old. How do I know I'm a girl? And I need more time to think about this.
But there are also people who do have like a slightly condescending but well-meaning attitude of like, well, people are young and like, how do we, it is a huge decision. I'd love to hear from all of you about like why we can trust kids to like tell us who they are.
Auntie speaks. Welcome back. So, Harry Potter is talking to trans kids. Yep. This is our lives. This is real life now. Let's see what he has to say.
Yeah, I definitely did always know. I'd say by the time I was like 14, I had came out as like openly gay. But I was just like, I didn't know trans was a thing until I was like really like 15 or 16. Right. So it was like, that was the term that I thought to use to describe myself because it fit best for like the position I was in the world,
Very similarly to what you said, like I grew into myself as a woman and I accepted that this is just who I am and I came out as gay. And that was really hard because I just didn't have the words to say. I didn't know what trans was. I didn't know that was allowed.
Yeah, and this is the thing, it's like both with language and with like representation in the media, then people like us, we don't see ourselves described in the media, and that means we think that we shouldn't exist or we don't have the language to understand how we exist. And it's
okay. So why am I talking about this? Why do I talk about this so much? If you're an adult, I really don't care what you do. I don't care what you do to your body. I don't care about anything. You're an adult. But when we start having conversations like this, you immediately start to get into dangerous territory. I knew what I was at 14 or 15. And I just didn't have the language. We didn't talk about it. We didn't know about it. So if we just talked about it to all the kids, they would know. No. Confusing kids at a young age about gender is very, very dangerous.
And I kind of went with that because that just wasn't something at the time like my parents taught me or like that I had access to learning. And I think that's something so valuable, especially for trans kids now, that there's more people that they can go to, or like there's more trans youth around for them to kind of relate to and go to. Like they're not, necessarily as alone as I think it would have been like when I was in elementary school or when.
For me, I have finally like tapped into this part of my mind when it was like, you always knew you were a girl and you've tried so hard to be this feminine being you are, while still identifying as something that you aren't. And the moment that I like came to that realization, I was like, I can't do this anymore. And a week later, I started hormones. And that was 3 years ago.
Okay, so there's a bunch of stuff here. So right away, they start in with, oh, well, if we would have had people talking to us, it would have been much, much better. So trans before 5 seconds ago was a mostly male thing. It was like something crazy like 1 in 300,000 or something like that who were trans women. Men want to change to women. It's been around for a long, long time. Women changing to men have been very, very small. Very, very small. So they would like all kids to be taught that gender is a construct. Gender doesn't mean anything. You can be a boy, you can be a girl, you can change whenever you like. That is a lie. That is a lie. And I love this last one. I'm sure that this last person is transgender. Sure. That person's an adult. They can do whatever they want. But isn't it just a little concerning that she made a decision and a week later she had a prescription for hormones? That should not be allowed. And I'm not talking deny her care. I'm talking a psychologist should probe just a little bit before you're given something to change your entire body. I don't know. How are we the extremists here where we say, no, you can't walk into a doctor's office and a week later walk out with hormones, even for an adult? That shouldn't be allowed. Maybe, a couple of months of a doctor asking you serious questions before you mutilate your body. I'm more libertarian, so I don't want to force the government on this, but I think maybe the American Psychological Association should put that forward as best practice. Don't you think? Or am I the crazy one? Am I crazy? Yeah.
And we are told that we're not old enough to know this yet. I'm only 11 years old. How do I know I'm a girl? And I need more time to think about this.
But there are also people who do have like a slightly condescending but well-meaning attitude of like, well, people are young and like, how do we, there is a huge decision. I'd love to hear from all of you about like why we can trust kids to like tell us who they are.
Well, I just feel like, me and you kind of share like a similar story. I transitioned like super young. I came out to my mom and, not telling her I was trans, but told her that I was a girl at the age of 6. It's been like years. Like I've lived female more than I've ever lived male. So like I just feel like it's just living proof that I obviously knew who I was, just like everyone else does.
11. 6. Yeah, did you know who you were at 6? Now, great, it might have worked out for you. I'm very happy for you that you're happy in your own skin now. I love that. That's awesome. But do you really expect us to believe that a 6-year-old who says that they're a girl when they're a boy, their parents should just say, okay, sure. Let's put you on puberty blockers. Let's go. Get those hormones into you. Got all these side effects. You will be infertile. You can't make decisions like that. You can't vape. You can't smoke a cigarette. You cannot have a drink because your brain is not mature enough to handle those things. But hey, you can decide right now at 11 that you never want to have children. Okay.
I was going to ask about this as well because I think there is like, look, obviously there are some people in the world who are just like not trying to engage with this conversation in any kind of good faith. I think a lot of the time it's just because people don't know a young trans person, so there's just this like theoretical idea about this in their head.
I agree with you in that I think people have their perceptions and their predisposed biases about our community, and I think that it's our job to kind of educate and fix that.
We talk about gender as a social construct and a lot of things as, constructs of society. And I think those things were constructed, to develop a hierarchy, to develop superiority and inferiority. Those social constructs of gender and, they kind of feed, I guess, a need for power and a need to be above others.
And it's all those systems serve generally the people at the top of them.
And I think it's so ingrained in all of us. As you could tell from my journey, it was so ingrained in me too, this gender binary and the system that we are living with, but, have not always lived with.
And so much of I think the reason there is so much undue consternation about transness and non-binary people is that without realizing that so much of the world hinges on a gender binary.
I just hate this. I really, really do. So first Harry, sorry, I'm always going to call him Harry. Harry comes in and says, people don't want to engage with trans people because they've just never met a trans person. No. We didn't care about trans people before about 5-10 years ago. We didn't care. If you were trans, whatever. You were trans, fine, whatever. We only care about it now because you want to shove it in our face. Every movie, every advertisement. They are advertising men in women's bathing suits now. They are talking about it to 5-year-olds and 6-year-olds. They are teaching people that gender is a social construct. Gender is a social construct. Yeah. You've never seen a baby. Do you know that they have done studies and seen gender motions from babies? Meaning a boy baby reaches for a truck and a girl baby reaches for the dolly. They've done it with apes. Are apes going on the gender construct, social gender construct? Does the female ape want the baby because of gender is a construction? And I love this at the end. I love this. It's to promote a hierarchy. Jordan Peterson, save us. If you guys all know Jordan Peterson's awesome. Half of his career is trying to educate these people that hierarchies are not constructed. They are older than written language. They are how we evolved. If you are stupid enough to think that gender is a social construct, I got a bridge I want to sell you.
It was always male pronouns in my dead name. And I remember I would at one point, I just had enough. I'm a person, you're a person, I treat you with respect, so I deserve it back.
And it's non-negotiable.
Yeah.
Like, I
it's
feel
not
like
a
people feel
choice.
like it's optional.
It's just like you would call any other person in your life
100%.
by he, him, or she, her, or they,
And
them
their
pronouns.
name.
Yeah.
And their name, and their proper name.
And their name.
Exactly.
I demand respect. I demand it. You owe it to me. No, nobody owes you respect. Politeness, yes. Good manners, yes. But you cannot expect the rest of the population to live in a world that is in your head. Now, I personally, if I meet a trans person, whatever name they want me to call them, I do. But you can't demand it from society. That's not how it works in a free society.
But that wasn't how it was 50, 100 years ago. And then if you go back even further, you go back and look at pre-colonization, different cultures, including my own South Asian heritage, that gender looked so different in so many different societies.
It's all about culture, just like how you were talking about your culture. And just like in Africa, there were trans identities way before colonialism started. And there were men that would not only marry cis wives, but also trans wives in their polyamorous and poly relationships. So this now it's oh, okay, this is so new to us, or they call it atypical. And it's not atypical, it's just the fact that when you colonized, you wrote your history books to fit the ideals you wanted us to know for years and years and years.
And there is also a thing I feel like in the conversation about, pronouns and things at the moment that there's a certain argument that's taken by some people who are well, this is all new.
Number one, this is not an argument. But number two, BS. Did you know there's a study that's was done on academic papers? It was just a little bit ago. It's what made Jonathan Haidt famous. They did a bunch of articles and sent them into a bunch of gender studies and publications, and all of it was around sex and gender as a social construct. And every single one of those were accepted as scholarly works. One of them, they rewrote Mein Kampf in a feminist tone of voice. That is academia right now. So unless you can produce a book that was done before academia went the way of the dodo bird, something, maybe 35 or 50 years ago that says this, I don't believe it. Sorry, citation needed.
Like that point, as in with language, like you were saying, we have, terms for parents, mom and dad. And even though those are the two in the dictionary, we have to apply the language to what is relevant today. Mm-hmm. It doesn't, there's no very specific, very one way that English has to be spoken. Mm-hmm. It needs to be applied to issues and to people. And those are things that need change in our language, how we talk about the LGBTQ plus community.
Mm-hmm. And then we look at people who have issues with new language and non-gendered language and terms that we're using, and it's people that those are not even directed towards.
We shouldn't have to sit down and have these conversations. We shouldn't have to sit down and have to fight for change.
Not directed towards? Not directed towards. You shouldn't have to fight for change? So you are a tiny, tiny little portion of the world. And you are so narcissistic that you believe that all gender language should be removed. All gender language? What do you do for Spanish and French? All of their nouns are gendered. What the hell are you gonna do? Well, I have to tell you, I'm offended by being called a birthing person or a chest feeder or a menstruating person. That is offensive. And because you need to feel comfortable, medical doctors, medical associations are changing the word for woman and making us into our bodily parts. That is misogynistic. And I never use that word. Why is it misogynistic? Well, because you are chopping us down to our parts. I'm not even a feminist. But if you want to talk degrading women, chopping us down to our parts is about as degrading as it gets. We exist. We're women. And yes, women is an adult human female. Okay, guys. This stuff is crazy. Please like. It helps the algorithm. I don't know if I'm ever going to get out to anybody. Sometimes I think I'm just screaming in the dark. So like, comment, and subscribe. I will see you on the next one.